So you want to learn how to paint in the style of Monet but doing your own original work? In today's video I'm going to show you how to do exactly that based on some local scenery coming up. So the colours we're using today are just the titanium white, the cool and the warm yellow, the warm red and the cool blue. And you can see we've got a series of brushes ranging from the largest, which is about a size 18 flathead. We've got a size 10 round head, a small detail brush, and then just a larger brush which we're going to start with just to put the primer on. So the first thing you ever want to do with any painting is to prime the canvas. A lot of people use a material called gesso. I like to just use very basic primer paint, so it's an awful lot cheaper. You can see I've just put it into a little old pot here, mixing some up. I'm just going to put this on very quickly onto the canvas. Now this serves two purposes. First of all, it's going to seal the actual fabric, so it makes it an awful lot easier to paint on. If you don't seal your canvas, then what happens is every time you put some paint onto the canvas just absorbs all that paint, so it makes it an awful lot harder to get some nice vibrant colours. And secondly, because of the nature of the painting we're doing today, it needs to have quite a nice pastel effect. So obviously by having white in the background, so we're going to work onto this before it's actually dried, then it's going to enable us to get that lovely pastel effect. So we're just going to work this all the way over. You don't have to be too neat with it, it's just giving it a nice background layer. So because this has been inspired by Monet's Venetian sunset, obviously the colour scheme is going to be reflecting that. So we're just going to start off with a very simple cool blue at the top. We're going to work really quickly. All I'm doing now is just giving the background colours. I have actually done a painting of the Monet sunset, which I'll leave a link just below. But this really is just trying to show how you can put your own twist to it. Just hint at the bottom. Working nice and fast whilst that background's still wet. Now you'll notice I'm using the same large brush. I'm also not actually washing it because it's I'm going so quickly with this at the moment, it doesn't actually matter because it's going to dry pretty quickly. So I'm just going to go straight on now with the cooler yellow. So it'll come out a little bit greeny because it's still got a hint of that blue on it, but that's okay. Remember, this is just the background, so we're going to be working all the layers on top of this. And then we're going to go yellow at the bottom. Now, the beauty, of course, with Monet style is that it's a very Impressionist style, so you can afford to be a lot looser. I'm just adding some of the warmer yellows, so it's a bit more of an orangey look. We're just repeating this below, so this is the waterline under here. Going right to the corners. And we're just going to finish off with the red. Just going to have a bit more yellow in there. I don't want it to be too red because it can get too dominant. Okay, I'm now going to use my round brush, so we're just going to start working some of those layers up. So I'm just going to start at the top. The technique here is to go pretty thick with your paint. I'm just going to add some white into here, and then we're just going to mix this very loosely. So it's almost like a crosshatch type technique. Now again, the beauty with Monet is that you can actually mix your colours onto the canvas directly, so it just makes it a much quicker way of working. So you can see I'm working up and down just whilst this blue paint's still a little bit wet. You're going to pick up some of that blue as well, so it will have a hint of green, which is fine. those directions, the direction of your brush, varied. It's very easy to get repetitive with the motion, and you want to keep it looking a little bit more interesting. I'm just going to add some of that warmer yellow now. Avoid doing dots, but you also want to avoid doing really long lines. It's hard to try and get the right sense, but you'll find your own style. Some people like to go a lot looser, other people like to go a lot more realistic. My comfort zone always used to be realistic when I was younger, so it's taken me a while to kind of learn a more loose style of painting, but I'll be honest, I find it a lot more fun, a lot more therapeutic. You don't have to worry about being a perfectionist all the time. Now the big difference in a moment is when we come to the ocean, we want the marks to be in a totally different style. So we want them to be much more linear to give that lovely sense of reflection going through the ocean. So again, try and keep those lines a little bit varied. Of course, Monet used to use a palette knife, so we're just recreating that technique with a large brush. Some white into there just to lighten it slightly. Now I'm working really quickly with this, but you know, the more layers you can add, the more depth you're going to give this painting. It's all about the marks, so obviously at the moment this has worked pretty quickly, but if I can do another load of layers on here, you're going to get a whole new dimension in terms of mark making. And of course we actually are working on relatively small scale here, so this canvas is 30 by 40 centimeters. You know, Monet would have got a lot bigger than this, but it just enables you to get a lot more detail when you go to a larger canvas. Now this blue has gone pretty dry, so I'm just going to have to add a little hint of blue when I come down here. Again, I'm not washing my brush, I'm just going straight on. And whilst I've got that blue, I'm just going to put some streaks through the painting higher up. I'm trying to avoid it getting too green, just going to put a sort of hint of white in there as well. If you find that your paint is just not giving you the colour you want, because obviously at the moment there's an awful lot of yellow on here, so it's going to be hard to get any true colours that aren't influenced by the yellow. I actually don't mind that aqua look at the moment, but you would just wait for it to dry, and then of course you'll have a much cleaner canvas to work on. However, because we're doing this Monet style painting, I love it when the colours do start to mix together, so that's why I'm working quickly, so that you can get that effect. And of course, you know, I'm using a large brush. You can always go to the fine detail brush, but I'm going to work on that towards the end. A little bit more white through there. Okay, I'm happy with that for now. I'm going to move on to the larger flat brush. This time we're just going to add a little bit more detail on the horizon line. So we're actually going to darken this down slightly. So the initial colours I showed you didn't have black, but this time I'm going to add black to it, just because the black would have likely to have dried out by the time I come to use it. So we're going to use the black for the lighthouse detail, and we're just going to mix some of that with the red as well. Just a tiny, tiny hint of the black. I'm just going to mark off where I want the horizon line to actually go. This is very, very subtle, just to give me more of a reference point at this stage. Alright, so we're just going to darken some of these areas down now with the flat brush. You're going to get some slightly different marks as well going on here. This is just to reflect the shadow area on Monet's painting. Now, the biggest difference with this painting is we're actually going to put the lighthouse on the right hand side of the painting, whereas of course in Venice the actual tower is on the left hand side. Alright, so we're just going to outline the actual detail now. So again, following the horizon line. I'll just mix some of that red and the black together again. I don't want it to be too harsh with just being black. So we've just got a small kind of rock feature coming up here. A small little outhouse of a building. And then out of that comes the lighthouse. Now, you know, this is Monet, or Monet style, so we don't want it to be too accurate, so I'm almost tempted to use the larger brush throughout the whole thing, but I have got a fine detail brush if you need, so I'm just going to give a hint at the moment. Then we've got another couple of buildings just here, and then the rock keeps going up. So once I'm happy with the shape, I can obviously then just start to darken that down. So again, just mixing the black and the red. Don't want it to be too harsh. Some of that lovely light reflection through. So again, just adding a little bit more red, and then we're just going to give some of those lovely lines coming down. And you're getting smaller and smaller and smaller as you get to the bottom. For that, I am going to use a fine detail brush just to get a bit more accurate. But again, you've got to be so careful. You don't want them to be too perfect, your lines. It just defeats the whole object of it being lovely and impressionist. I like to take some of these lines out slightly as well, just because you're going to get some hints of reflection from the rock formation just here, and some of these buildings just here. Alright guys, just to finish off, I'm not happy with this. I want to just neutralise this down a little bit more, so I'm just going to add some white just to take this a little bit more neutral. And this is where you can then start to add those layers that I was telling you about earlier. So if you don't have too obvious a mark in terms of those cross-hatching lines that we made earlier, so this would just help to break that up. So I've used a clean round head brush. I'm just going to start to blend those in a little bit more subtly. Now the last bit I'm doing, this is the really fun bit. This is what I was talking about earlier, when you can start to build up those layers. So the more you titivate, I always say one of the hardest things in painting is knowing when to stop. But with this style of painting, the more you can add, the more layers you add, the more dynamic it's going to look. You obviously want to make sure you keep getting those gorgeous separate colours coming through. So again, now I'm just working on the ocean, so I'm just having those separate elongated line effects, but just adding some white and yellow into this just to break it up a little bit. As long as you've got that natural blend of, you can gradually see the yellow going into the blue, then you really can get away with whatever takes your fancy in terms of mixing up the colours. You just want the predominant colours to show through in the background. So there you have it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed today's video on how to produce your own original painting, but in the style of a very famous artist. If you have liked the video, then please do hit that like button just below, as it really does help our channel. And if you'd like to see some more weekly top tips or inspiration for paintings like this, then hit that subscription button just below, because we do weekly videos. Alrighty guys, we'll see you next time. Happy painting.